right, everybody, welcome. Ready to do a deep dive on IT security.
Absolutely. Let's break down these cybersecurity readings. Get you prepped for that lecture, whether it's all brand new or you just need a little refresher.
Yeah, exactly. No judgment here.
Exactly.
Okay, so first up, building an IT asset registry.
Okay.
I know.
Sounds a little dry.
It does sound a little dry,
Yeah,
but it's like the foundation, really, of everything else, right?
it is.
Because you can't protect what you don't know you have.
Exactly. And this document lays out very clearly how to create one of these registries,
Right.
which is important not just for, audits and things like that, but really for your everyday security.
Yeah, and this document really stresses it's not just making a list. It's like we're talking hardware, software, data.
Yeah, you got to categorize it all, right?
Yeah.
What's critical, what's sensitive, all that.
Absolutely. Because some data is way more valuable, let's be honest, to a hacker than other things.
Absolutely. So, if you're prioritizing resources during an audit, or even worse, you're dealing with a breach, you know what to focus on.
Right. And I think it's just a good point, too. The document really stresses keeping this thing updated. It's a living document.
Oh, absolutely.
Not something you just do once and forget about. New software, hardware gets retired.
The threat landscape changes constantly, right?
Constantly.
So you got to keep up with it.
Okay, now this is where it gets, I think, a little bit more fun. We're moving on to building risk assessment.
Okay.
This is where we get into the weeds a little bit with the asset threat vulnerability framework.
Right. So this is all about thinking proactively, right?
Yes.
Like a hacker would.
Yes, thinking like a hacker. So we're taking that asset list we just talked about
Yeah.
and basically saying, what's the worst that could happen?
Right. And this document does a really good job of laying out what some of those common threats are. Right?
Yeah.
You've got your obvious ones, cyber attacks,
Yeah, right.
natural disasters,
You don't think about those.
human error.
Oh, big time.
Right. And so you take each of those threats and you look for vulnerabilities.
Okay.
Right. So let's say your network security is outdated. Well, that's an open door for a cyber attack.
It's wide open.
Right. And this document actually gives you some examples of vulnerabilities. Right?
Yeah, like what?
Outdated software we talked about, or even just a missing disaster recovery plan.
Which, who thinks about that?
Right.
But it's so important. Okay, so then we're getting into like, okay, how do we actually mitigate these risks?
Right. And how do we prioritize them?
Yes.
Because you can't do everything.
Exactly. So this document talks about 4 main ways to handle these risks, to mitigate them, right? Avoidance,
Okay.
reduction, transfer, and acceptance.
Yeah. And they each have their own, strengths.
Right.
Best for certain situations.
Right. So like a pharmaceutical company, for example, they might just completely avoid the risk of certain side effects by just not going down that research path.
Yeah. Completely avoid that area of research.
Right. Or let's say you're an online retailer. You might try to reduce the risk of a data breach.
Multi-factor authentication.
Exactly. Encryption, all that good stuff. Now, transfer, that sounds a lot like insurance to me. Am I wrong?
You're not wrong. That's a great example, right? Construction company buys insurance in case a project gets delayed by bad weather.
Makes perfect sense.
Shifting that risk.
Okay, now acceptance. That's the one that always gets me because it sounds like you're just giving up.
It's not about giving up. It's about acknowledging the risk exists, but you've got a plan to manage it if it happens.
Okay, that makes sense. So like a financial institution might say, okay, a market downturn could happen. They accept that risk, but they've got strategies in place to try to ride it out.
Minimize the impact.
Exactly.
Got it.
So there you have it, folks, our deep dive on IT security. I think the big takeaway, really, from these readings, at least for me, is that asset registry.
That's the foundation.
It's the foundation. You can't do anything else until you really know what you have. It's like locking your doors before you even think about who might be trying to break in.
Exactly. And don't get too caught up in one type of mitigation strategy. You've got options. Sometimes it's not about building bigger walls. It's about being smart about where you build them.
It's about being strategic. So hopefully you all feel a little more prepared for that lecture now. Good luck. And remember, in the world of cybersecurity, knowledge truly is your best armor.
It really is.
All right. See you next time.
See ya.